third graders. I'm here today. I'm really excited. We're going to try using YouTube as a way of me communicating with you. I think most of you know how to get onto YouTube. So today we're going to be doing a read aloud. Before we get to that though, I want to just say I'm so excited to see how many of you guys are using Canvas and using those discussion posts to do morning meeting posts. It was so nice to get a chance to chat with some of you today. And some of you are using Remind, and that's awesome, so that I can communicate with you. If your family hasn't signed up for Remind yet, please remind them to do that. Thank you, third graders. If I didn't get to see you last week on Thursday or Friday, you have a packet that's coming in the mail that will have some things for you to do, maybe some books for some of you, some pencils, some paper, pencil sharpeners, things like that, just depending on what your family needed. So I just want to say thank you so much for all that you're working so hard. I miss you so much. I wish I got to see you tomorrow, but this will have to be the second best. I am so excited because today we're going to be reading a book that I've always wanted to read and just haven't had the time to read. So I'm really excited that we get to do this as a class together. I've never read this book before, but it's been recommended to me by so many people. I thought you guys would really enjoy reading it along with. So today we're going to be reading The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. And it's a book about a rabbit that's made of china, which is like a delicate material that maybe a plate is made of or a teacup. If you've ever seen Beauty and the Beast, you know, Chip and Mrs. Teapot, they were probably made of china. And if you notice, Chip is a little bit chipped, and most likely that's because he's made of china. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Once in a house on Egypt Street, there lived a rabbit who was made almost entirely of china. He had china arms and china legs, china paws and a china head, a china torso and a china nose. His arms and legs were jointed and joined by wire so that his china elbows and china knees could be bent, giving him much freedom of movement. His ears were made of real rabbit fur, and beneath the fur there was a strong, bendable wire, which allowed the ears to be arranged into poses that reflected the rabbit's mood. Jaunty, tired, full of ennui, his tail, too, was made of real rabbit fur, and was fluffy and soft and well-shaped. The rabbit's name was Edward Tulane, and he was tall. He measured almost 3 feet from the tip of his ears to the tip of his feet. His eyes were painted a penetrating and intelligent blue. In all, Edward Tulane felt himself to be an exceptional specimen. Only his whiskers gave him pause. They were long and elegant, as they should be, but they were of uncertain origin, which means he's not really sure where they came from. Edward felt quite strongly that they were not the whiskers of a rabbit, whom the whiskers had belonged to initially. What unsavory animal was a question that Edward could not bear to consider for long. And so he did not. He preferred, as a rule, to not think of unpleasant thoughts. Edward's friend was a 10-year-old dark-haired girl named Ibatoulline Tulane, who thought almost as highly of Edward as Edward thought of himself. Each morning after she dressed herself for school, Ibatoulline dressed Edward. The china rabbit was in possession of an extraordinary wardrobe comprised of handmade silk suits, custom shoes fashioned from the finest leather and designed specifically for his rabbit feet, and a wide array of hats equipped with holes so that they could easily fit over Edward's large and expressive ears. Each pair of well-cut pants had a small pocket for Edward's gold pocket watch. Ibatoulline wound this watch for him each morning. "Now, Edward," she said to him after she was done winding the watch. "When the big hand is on the 12 and the little hand is on the 3, I will come home to you." She placed Edward on a chair in the dining room and positioned the chair so that Edward was looking out the window and could see the path that led up to the Tulane front door. Ibatoulline balanced the watch on his left leg. She kissed the tips of his ears, and then she left, and Edward spent the day staring out at Egypt Street, listening to the tick of his watch and waiting. Of all the seasons of the year, the rabbit most preferred winter, for the sun set early then, and the dining room windows came dark, and Edward could see his own reflection in the glass. And what a reflection it was! What an elegant figure he cut! Edward never ceased to be amazed at his own fineness. In the evening, Edward sat on the dining room table with other members of the Tulane family: Ibatoulline, her mother and father, and Ibatoulline's grandmother, who was called Pellegrina. True, Edward's ears barely cleared the tabletop, and true also he spent the duration of the meal staring straight ahead at nothing but the bright and blinding white of the tablecloth. But he was there, a rabbit at the table. Ibatoulline's parents found it charming that Ibatoulline considered Edward real, and that she sometimes requested a phrase or story to be repeated because Edward had not heard it. "Papa," Ibatoulline would say, "I'm afraid that Edward didn't catch that last bit." Ibatoulline's father would then turn in the direction of Edward's ears and speak slowly, repeating what he had just said for the benefit of the China rabbit. Edward pretended out of courtesy to Ibatoulline to listen, but in truth, he was not very interested in what people had to say. And also, he did not care for Ibatoulline's parents and their condescending manner toward him. All adults, in fact, condescended to him. Only Ibatoulline's grandmother spoke to him as Ibatoulline did, as an equal to another. Pellegrina was very old. She had a large, sharp nose and bright black eyes that shone like dark stars. It was Pellegrina who was responsible for Edward's existence. It was she who had commissioned his making. She who had ordered his silk suits and his pocket watch, his jaunty hats and his bendable ears, his fine leather shoes and his jointed arms and legs, all from a master craftsman in her native France. It was Pellegrina who had given him as a gift to Ibatoulline on her 7th birthday. And it was Pellegrina who came each night to tuck Ibatoulline into bed and Edward into his. "Will you tell us a story, Pellegrina?" Ibatoulline asked her grandmother each night. "Not today, lady," said Pellegrina. "When?" cried Ibatoulline. "What night?" "Soon," said Pellegrina. "Soon there will be a story." And then she turned off the light, and Edward and Ibatoulline lay in the dark of the bedroom. "I love you, Edward," Ibatoulline said each night after Pellegrina had left. She said those words, and then she waited, almost as if she expected Edward to say something in return. Edward said nothing. He said nothing because, of course, he could not speak. He lay in his small bed next to Ibatoulline's large one. He stared up at the ceiling and listened to the sound of her breath entering and leaving her body, knowing that soon she would be asleep, because Edward's eyes were painted on and he could not close them. He was always awake. Sometimes, if Ibatoulline put him into his bed on his side instead of on his back, he could see through the cracks in the curtains and out into the dark night. On clear nights, the stars shone, and their pin-prick light comforted Edward in a way that he could not quite understand. Often, he stared at the stars all night until the dark finally gave way to dawn. That's the end of chapter Goodbye. We'll see you soon.